Welcome back. Well, yes, indeed, Pascal Igbo joins us now to look at this matter of salaries. Already, SERAP is going to court, taking them to court for what they describe as forced labor. But then, if barring any last-minute changes, the president, he moves into Aso Rock today, settles in, and then have this meeting with governors about this bailout. What do you think of this?
That would be too, thank you anyway for inviting me. That would be too knee-jerky. And I don't think that's what you need for a government that is preaching change.
Which part is knee-jerky? To have that meeting with them?
Well, to just do something just because, just give us a bailout. What is that? So that's unsustainable. Absolutely unsustainable. So if the oil price keeps going down southward, what will you keep coming you keep asking for a bailout?
But I don't think they're asking for the bailout because they're looking for sustainability. They're trying to solve an immediate problem.
And then
that's spanned over for some almost 8 months or some over.
Well, some of them were the governors before now. So what are you solving? No, what you need to do, and I think they need to look at this on an advisory level because we're tired of sounding very, as if we're criticizing. Is that governance is not for small boys. It's not, and we're getting to that level where people will be called to be governors, and they said, you know what, I can't do it. I don't have the mental capacity. I don't have the inner fiber to be able to lead myself.
Never had
not talk about that. Lead my people. No, you are getting there. This is all, we're in a evolutionary. It's evolutionary. However, we are getting tired of evolution. We want to get revolutionary. And those are two key ways to change a system. You either allow the system to evolve itself, or to have people that have radical ideas come and affect the system in such a way that the system can go back.
Let me look at this other angle or this scenario, because it would seem as if now the chickens have come home to roost. Time was when we talked about minimum wage. Let's not forget about minimum wage. So many states at that point in time, so many of the governors did say, wait a minute, we can't pay this certain amount as minimum wage. Then the labor union, there was so very much on that particular one. Is it a case of now getting to the future and we just realize that what so many of these states were talking about is true after all?
No. So I remember I was here and I did mention that if you can't pay a certain minimum wage to your people, you have no right. Why do you want to be the governor? Do you understand? Are they owing themselves salaries? If you can't pay your people salaries, and I'm going to get in, I hope we'll have time to talk about this, they need to do critical things to be able to hold the moral compass of the states.
Like what?
There are two things I expect the APC to begin to do now. I'm calling the APC because they're not in government. Some of them will be constitutional. I expect them to begin to, instead of this bickering that is going on in their house, to come up with bills that will strategically reform the system, that will empower the states to run their governments.
What kind of bills?
There are certain things, and I think we should go back to this, the asset control, or what we call resource control. Some of the things that you will expect the state governments to do are still within the exclusive list. The kind of reform we want, the kind of change we want, are such structural reforms that will allow the states to, for instance, be able to mine the minerals in their states.
Some of this
and
is
get very strategic about it.
At the national conference.
Now, that's the point I'm making. These things have been discussed. The second one are administrative reforms. That, the change that will become administrative. You need to be able to find alternative source of funds. Get the capacity for public-private partnership. Get the private capital into the system. These things don't sound like rocket science to me.
Mr. Dibble, some of these people in governance right now have been there. It's not as if they are new. So this question now goes, if they can't manage the litter that is being shared, how is it that they'll be able to manage when they now have rights to control their own assets?
Isn't this why people are calling for some of them to resign, go away? If you can't, go away. And it will have to come. And this sounds very simplistic.
Sorry, you haven't answered my question. I need to go back there. It will seem as if someone is trying to be on the side of the governors, but I'm trying to look at it logically. A state pays
18,000 naira.
No, 10,000 naira, and you want it to be taken to 18,000 naira, and that's almost like 80% increase, and it's moved to 18,000 naira, and there's no significant amount of increase in the income that comes to the state that will also equate that to that increment.
Isn't that supposed to be, Solomon, supposed to be a political issue? Isn't that supposed to be a political question? I'm coming, I can afford to pay. I will find a way to pay. I have this means to pay. Vote me in. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I'm
concerned about people who came back to government, who were not able to. And I'm still there, and I'm coming to say bail out. Bail out for what?
A moment, I'll give you the time to go so that you can make it clear to me. I see this more as a national problem. I recall even Olisa Agbakoba, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, had also said something about the Constitution to, free some of these states so that they can have access to some of these natural resources and make more money for the states. And you can imagine some of the states will call, in quote, poorest states. They have immense natural resource to the extent that they have been hindered from tapping and making use of it. So if you have an increment of almost 80% for salaries and there's no increment in the income, then there's no way you can pay.
So that, that's why I started by saying that there are things that we expect to happen, now, which two of them, and I mentioned two areas, which one is administrative and the other one is constitutional. And the constitutional falls within the purview of, as it were, those that have control of the National Assembly. They must look at this within and say, how do we, on a long run, solve this issue of cap in hand every month? You don't act, and like I've said this, Nigeria will need to have a Minister of Finance, not just another Minister of Finance. They would need to have a Minister of Finance that can finance deficits. And that means you're going to look for money before you start disbursing it. So this
not disburse,
not just sitting,
revenue that accrues to
because there is none. And our prayer is that this thing will keep going southward. If it keeps going southward, it becomes less encouraging for people who cannot bring solution to come out of this space.
But doesn't that speak to the mindset where many times you heard, look, this is about the cookie jar, where they think that's where the honey pot is?
Absolutely.
So you see people moving from one party to the other those days. It's because, look, they want to be where the action is.
Now you see that it's, and that's the point I'm making here, and I don't want to move, I don't want us to move away from it, is what actionables can be done. We have zeroed, we have x-rayed this matter in the past, and I've given my positions on these things. And I'm saying now is, let's hold these guys responsible. Let's even advise them. You need to do things. We're tired of the planning, okay? And we've also talked about the need to plan, but you cannot suffer from analysis paralysis. You cannot use 10 years to plan to be mad.